One of the biggest mistakes women make in relationships is believing that lowering their standards is somehow an act of love. That bending, that compromising, that shrinking themselves for a man's attention, it's often dressed up as sacrifice, as loyalty, as patience. But in reality, it's a slow erosion of self-respect. And once that begins, it's hard to stop because it sets a precedent that your worth is negotiable, that your values can be compromised, that his temporary interest is more important than your permanent dignity. Let's get this clear. Attention and love are not the same thing. Attention can be cheap, inconsistent, even manipulative. Love, real love, is built on respect, consistency, and alignment of values. But many people confuse the two. They see a text message at midnight, a compliment, a quick glance, or an on-again, off-again effort and mistake it for something meaningful. Independent women don't fall into that trap. They don't measure their value by how many crumbs of attention they can gather. They'd rather stand alone in wholeness than be half valued by someone else. Why? Because attention without respect is empty. It's like drinking from a cup with a hole in the bottom. You keep going back, but you're never satisfied. And here's the truth. When you lower your standards just to hold on to someone, you're not really keeping them. You're just delaying the inevitable while teaching them that your boundaries are flexible, that your expectations don't have to be met, that they can give you less than you deserve and you'll still stay. This is where psychology comes in. People don't rise to the level of what you hope for, they rise or fall to the level of what you demand. If you accept inconsistency, if you accept disrespect, if you accept the bare minimum, that's exactly what you'll keep getting. You're training the other person on how to treat you. Every lowered standard is a silent permission slip that says, this is enough. And if you're not careful, you'll wake up one day realizing that you've built a relationship on a foundation of concessions, not convictions. Independent women understand this at a deep level. They know that boundaries aren't walls to keep love out. They're filters to keep chaos out. Standards aren't about being too picky or too demanding. They're about protecting your values, your time, and your future. It's about saying, I know who I am, I know what I bring, and I won't accept less than what aligns with that. And when a man can't meet those standards, she doesn't beg, she doesn't chase, she doesn't compromise her identity. She walks because she knows that her energy is better spent building her life than breaking herself down to fit into someone else's. Think about it this way. When you compromise your standards, you don't just lose a piece of yourself in that moment. You set in motion a pattern of self-betrayal. Each time you say yes when you mean no, each time you excuse behavior you know is wrong, each time you convince yourself, this is fine, you weaken your own foundation. You might think you're preserving the relationship, but what you're really doing is sacrificing the relationship with yourself. And that is the one relationship you can't afford to destroy. Philosophically, this comes down to the question of identity. Who are you when no one is watching? Who are you when love is tested, when loneliness is heavy, when temptation to settle is strong? Are you someone who holds firm or someone who folds? Because identity is not built in the easy moments. It's forged in the moments when compromise looks tempting. And the independent woman chooses self, respect over self, betrayal every single time. And here's the powerful paradox. When you refuse to lower your standards, yes, you might lose people. You might lose attention. You might even go through seasons of solitude. But what you gain is priceless. You gain clarity. You gain confidence. You attract relationships that match your energy instead of drain it. You attract men who rise to meet your standards instead of those who drag you down to theirs. The very act of holding firm filters out the wrong people and clears the path for the right ones. Now let's talk about temporary attention, because that's often the bait. the quick message, the sudden interest when he feels you pulling away. The inconsistent effort that keeps you guessing, keeps you hooked. It's psychology, one-on-one, variable reinforcement. The same trick that keeps people addicted to slot machines. You never know when the payoff is coming, so you keep playing. But independent women don't gamble with their peace. They don't sit at a broken machine hoping for a jackpot. They recognize the pattern. They see the inconsistency and they step away. Because they understand this, a man's attention is not a gift if it comes at the expense of your dignity. This takes courage. It takes discipline. It takes being willing to stand in discomfort instead of running toward what feels familiar but unsafe. But that's the essence of independence. It's the ability to choose yourself even when it's hard. It's the ability to say, I would rather face the pain of solitude than the poison of self-betrayal. That's not arrogance. That's not selfishness. That's strength. And let's be clear, this doesn't mean independent women are cold, unfeeling, or unwilling to compromise in healthy ways. It means they know the difference between compromise and collapse. Compromise is meeting in the middle when values align. Collapse is giving up who you are just to keep someone else comfortable. One builds connection, the other builds resentment. And the high-value woman refuses to build a relationship on resentment. So if you take nothing else from this point, remember this: lowering your standards for temporary attention is not love, it's self-abandonment. And self-abandonment always costs more than loneliness ever will. The independent woman understands that protecting her worth is not about pride. It's about survival. Because the moment she starts to negotiate her value, she loses the very thing that makes her strong, her sense of self. And here's the closing thought: the love you accept tape teaches the world the love you believe you deserve. So ask yourself, what lesson are you teaching? Are you showing that your standards are negotiable or that your worth is non-negotiable? Because at the end of the day, a man can either rise to meet your value or he can fall away. But your self-respect should never move. Never lower your standards for temporary attention, because respect that is earned will always outlast attention that is borrowed. One of the most overlooked signs of strength in a woman is her ability to protect her peace. And when I say peace, I'm not talking about silence or avoidance. I'm talking about that deep internal calm that isn't shaken by someone else's storms. The truth is, many relationships don't fall apart because of a lack of love. They crumble because one person sacrifices their peace to accommodate another person's chaos. And when you do that, you lose yourself piece by piece until there's nothing left but exhaustion. Independent women understand this in a way that changes how they move. They know that love cannot survive in an environment of constant drama, manipulation, or emotional instability. They recognize that chaos is contagious. It spreads into your thoughts, your sleep, your decisions, and even your health. And if you're not careful, you'll end up carrying a weight that was never yours to carry. That's why an independent woman doesn't sacrifice her peace for a man's chaos. She refuses to turn her inner world into a battleground just to prove her loyalty. Think about the psychology of this. When you consistently expose yourself to someone else's chaos, whether it's their mood swings, their lack of self-control, their toxic cycles, you become conditioned to live in a state of survival. Your nervous system adapts. You start expecting the next argument, the next problem, the next disappointment. That's not love, that's hypervigilance. That's trauma disguised as commitment. And if you've ever been there, you know how draining it is. Now here's the difference. An independent woman has trained herself to recognize the cost. She knows that every time she steps into someone else's chaos to fix it, to manage it, to stabilize it, she's abandoning herself. And she's not willing to make that trade. Not because she doesn't care, but because she cares too much uh, about her future, about her energy, about the kind of life she's building. She's not cold. She's not detached. She's just wise enough to know that peace is not something you gamble with. Philosophically, this comes down to the nature of boundaries. A lot of people think boundaries are about pushing others away, but they're really about protecting what matters most. Peace is sacred. It's the soil where love, creativity, and growth take root. If the soil is poisoned by chaos, nothing healthy can grow there. So when a woman refuses to sacrifice her peace for a man's instability, she's not being selfish, she's being strategic. She's saying, I will not allow what's toxic to take root in the garden of my life. And here's where the conversation gets real.